Wake up and welcome to another episode here for the Sleeveless Funked Pod. If you're watching the video feed, mindful media and communication, yes, still sleeveless, still healing with the tattoo. We're gonna go like probably one more week sleeveless. I apologize. I know it's hard to take someone serious that does sleeveless podcasts. Just listen. Apologies for that, but I still obviously want to get a podcast out because there are so many things are happening that need some discussion from my point of view. And since it's my podcast, that's what matters on this podcast. No, your point of view matters too. If there's anything that you would want to know, of course, from a media communication point of view, shout out, of course. I'm always happy to take listener / sleeveless shirt viewer questions and feedback into consideration. Today, however, and again, I understand it's difficult to take someone on a sleeveless shirt serious when he talks about AI, but I did feel like I have to do another AI podcast. Why? Because I actually just like last Friday, 1 week ago, today, as of time of recording Friday, 1 week ago, I gave a talk with the Chamber of Commerce here. Nice event. Thanks for organizing it, everybody who was involved and for inviting me. And it was about like AI and business communication and stuff like this. And when I was talking to the networking part of the event, I did realize that while I'm all in, and lots of the people that I talk to on a daily basis are all in, because it's the circle that I move around in, I guess, many people are not. And I mean, it's normal because you're always exposed to your in-group, right, to your circle. And then once you get out of that in-group and you talk to others, you're like, oh, hey, so I'm in this bubble. I'm in this tech communication, like early adopter bubble. Many people are not because they have other things to do, obviously, right? So not everyone can just keep up to date with like all the latest developments and so on. So I figured, hey, let's analyze a little bit more. Let's break it down a little bit more, like the impact of AI onto society / communication, because maybe not everybody is aware of the potential, the challenges, and so on, okay? So the first thing I want to say, and there's one thing that I realized with my students at university actually, is that when I talk about AI, many of the students aged 18, the younger ones to like 22-ish or so, they're like, yeah, it's just another buzzword. It's like NFTs and like crypto and stuff. So not really interested because it's a fad, it's going to go away. And I highly disagree with that. Like, I don't think that AI is in any shape or form similar to any of those buzzwords. Also, crypto is still there. It's just not as prevalent anymore, maybe, but the blockchain is not going to go away. But never mind, right? So I don't think that AI is in any shape or form related to that. And I think AI is here to stay. And why do I say that? Well, because it's not just a hype, right? So I graduated, in 2009 from university. And during uni times, I mentioned it on another AI podcast before, me and my classmates, we did some work as student jobs, right? And like some of us worked for some companies that did some digital marketing and stuff like this, like early phase of digital marketing, early area of digital marketing. And then what some of the companies did was they would use crawlers, bots, to search the internet for related content. Like, let's assume you're in the travel space, you would search for travel content in 2009. You would save the travel content. I'm breaking down right now, right? You would save the travel content to your database, for example, and then you would have a program that would rewrite the travel content based on keywords and then publish it as your own blog post, automated, in 2009, 2010, whatever. So that's 14, 15 years ago, and it's kind of like what ChatGPT does now. ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and whatnot, much, much faster, much better quality, of course, but it's not like it just happened overnight. And I think that's important to understand, to see it's not just a trend, a fad, whatever. That's why it's not going to go away. The biggest difference is that now it's at scale, and the mainstream access, the mainstream acceptance, maybe even. I think we're still far away from like my mom using it, for example, but like the amount of people using it, of course, also leads to AI companies getting more data to train the AI models on, which then in return makes the AI better. Can argue about that right now with ChatGPT 4.0. I don't think it's that great, by the way. But yeah, so that's a wedding. That's why it's not just a fad. Okay, I just want to make this clear. AI is not going to go away unless you have laws that prohibit it. But then people will find a way around, like VPNs, whatever, right? You name it. Claude, for example, the Gen AI tool from Anthropic, wasn't available outside the US for a while, and you just use a VPN. You log in via VPN, via the US VPN. Once you logged in, you can use it, right? So, not to say that I did it, I would never do such a thing, but the possibility was there. Okay, so just to say why it's not a fad. Okay, it's not a fad. And what we can also see is, like, if you're familiar with it, Gartner, the research firm, they published their hype cycle about the new technologies and so on. The hype cycle that shows, like, okay, in the beginning, it's like this increased interest in a new technology. Like, I was like, oh, it's so excited, and you're like that peak of like I'm just, for lack of a better term, call it exaggerated expectations, right? You're like, oh, AI is going to change everything, but then it doesn't, and then you're hitting down the downward slope into the valley of like disillusionment is what I call it. And after the disillusionment valley, then slowly you figure out, okay, the new technology doesn't change the world, but if you use it in the right way, maybe it can help us to optimize certain processes. And then from that valley of disillusionment, you go into like slowly towards the enlightenment phase. Okay, and then like after a while, you hit enlightenment, and you're like, yep, now we figured out how to implement the new technology into our business processes, for example, to actually really use it to its best possibilities. Okay, and so Gen AI, generative artificial intelligence, Gen AI, so ChatGPT, Gemini, all those things. Right now, according to Gartner in 2024, it just passed that peak of like super high expectations and slowly going on the downward hill where people realize, okay, sounds cool, but it's not going to change the whole world all of a sudden. And so that's where Gartner places that right now. Other AI tools, not Gen AI, but other actually business AI, for example, right, that makes sense of like data, for example. If you collect lots of data and you're in a business setting, you want the tool that makes sense of it, like more corporate AI, for lack of a better term right now, is already more towards the enlightenment phase, because we've been using it. People in business have been using AI models for a longer time to make sense of numbers, stats, and so on, and slowly getting better at it. Okay, but the generative AI, creating things by prompting it, it was super exciting, but now people are like, it's cool, but does it really change my life? Because that's where Gartner says we are. But also shows that it is on that life cycle, right? So it's not just gonna like disappear. It will go through the life cycle probably, and eventually we're gonna figure out how to actually make use of it for, like, I don't know, our whatever purpose that might be. Okay. Also, what applies here, I think my favorite media theory, and I have to throw it in right in the beginning, Marshall McLuhan, right? We talk about him all the time because good old Marshall, a rock star when it comes to media theories. He said, the medium is the message, right? We talk about it many a times. And one more time, just to recap, this media theory suggests that the medium through which we communicate is just as important as the content of the communication itself. So Marshall McLuhan argued that media technology, it fundamentally alters the social and cognitive process, actually like both of it, like the way we interact and the way we understand things. So now the question is, how then AI as a medium reshapes our perception and interaction with the information? Do we care that it's made by AI, that it's presented by AI, that it's researched by AI? Do we care that like a movie that we watch is all made by Sora, for example, that AI tool by OpenAI that can create videos, or don't we? So I think there's a huge potential, or like a huge discussion to be had about potential changes in cognitive processes, for example, and how it affects social interaction. If I talk to you and I know that what you present to me is all just based on AI and not your own thoughts, will I take it serious? The medium is the message. If it's via AI, will I be like, that's lazy? To be honest, right now I feel a little bit like it. So when I read a thesis, for example, of a student, and I mean, you can see the pattern. So I use all the AI tools, obviously, because I research on it. So I use all the mainstream AI tools, And I think I got the patterns down, at least the standard patterns, right? So when I read a thesis, I'm like, oh, okay, that's a Gemini pattern, that's a ChatGPT pattern, or that's a free ChatGPT pattern even. That's a ChatGPT 3.5 pattern, that's a Claude pattern, for example. I take it a little less serious. It's not that I grade it worse, because of course I do look at the content, obviously. I'm not blinded by the medium itself, but I do give the feedback saying like that reads very much like you just did it with ChatGPT, and I think you should put your own thoughts in it, and so on. I'm not going to break down all the theses right now, but so I do think that the medium actually impacts the message quite a bit. Now, taking it further, once we're more exposed to AI, once we're more used to AI, once AI is normal in everyday life, will we really care about it is the question. If you like, the news are completely presented by AI, the news anchor is AI, for example, do we really care about it is a question. I would like to hear from you, like, would you care about it? Do you need to see real humans presenting real human news? Or is it like AI-based news on what the AI researchers by AI presenters, for example, would that also be satisfying? Would movies completely made in AI be okay for you? Interesting question, right? I think so. I think so too. That's what we research, by the way, in the AI and Communications Lab. So follow aicomlab.com, check out the socials. We have LinkedIn, I think. Follow us there. I think also, to add another point, I think we got to discuss the abilities of AI. Right? Can it really do everything, or is it just pretending to do it? And there are a few things I want to quickly discuss. Like, one is NLP, and the good NLP, natural language processing, NLP. It's like when autocorrect kind of like meets a philosopher, right? So that's kind of like the mix. So there are a few theories that go with that I actually brought you here. One would be the taking notes, the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, new theory, if you listen to the podcast. So that's why I slow down. You remember, if I bring something new, I slow down a little. If I bring something that's we talked about, like McLuhan, I go a bit faster, right? So this theory now actually suggests that the structure of a language determines, or at least greatly influences, the modes of thought and behavior characteristic of the culture in which it is spoken. Does it make sense? So in its very strong form, okay, it claims that language determines thought, basically. Okay, in its weaker form, you could suggest that language influences thought, at least doesn't determine, but it somewhat influences it. Now, the question that goes along with that, if you talk about AI today, is how does AI's language structure, or how might it shape the worldview and outputs that we have in regards to the worldview? And there are huge implications from my point of view when it comes to cross-cultural communication, language preservation, and so on. I like to give the example. I did a conference talk a few years ago on new media paradigm shifts. Okay, like how new media, such as social media, influence the way we communicate. So if you look back in time a little bit, you'll see that way back we had like cave paintings to communicate, right? Then we fast forward, we went to like letters by ravens and letters by mail, of course. Then we get into emails, messaging, and so on. You can see that those forms of communication, they change the way we communicate, right? A letter, you have to think about it. You just write it down. You write a long letter probably because you don't just want to send a short letter because you have to send it, right? You put stamp on it, go to the post office, all those things. It takes time. So you're writing a long form, whatever you're writing, to really make sure it's worth it. With messages, doesn't matter. You send like a text message, you send a sticker, you send whatever, a GIF, a meme, an animation, whatever you want, right? So it changes the way we communicate. So the way we communicate, we send way more messages now than before, but with way less context, or content at least. Okay? So now how will AI influence that? Is AI even better now at predicting what we want to say? So we're just using the AI predictions instead of like actually our own thoughts. So like you're typing something and AI suggests, and you're like, good enough, so just send it. Or if you get a text and then AI suggests a sticker for you to reply or an emoji or whatever, you're like, oh yeah, that fits, sure, whatever, good enough. Will this influence the way we communicate and the way we think? Because it makes it so much easier. So we don't have to put our own thoughts in it. We just go with what AI suggests. I think that's a huge field to be discussed, because I think the implications that come along with it are insane. Again, let me know what you think. I think AI, if you're not careful, will, even if you're careful, AI will shape the way we communicate, and there's no way around it from my point of view. Let me know what you think. And to add another point to that, like if you just look at image generation, right? Like, okay, DALL-E, for example, which is integrated in ChatGPT, Bing has it, right? Microsoft has it, also connected to DALL-E, of course. Midjourney is awesome. Adobe has it. Canva has some image generator and so on. So how does that all connect to that, right? And there's the theory that's called the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. It's like a whole paper. And that paper argues that mechanical reproduction like fundamentally changes the nature of art. Kind of like it's eroding its, again, lack of a better term, the aura of authenticity and uniqueness, okay? So the theory suggests that this change could like more or less democratize art, but also could lead to the manipulation, for example, for political purposes. So if you add more mechanical production to art, right? You make art like a mechanical production process rather than like this one creative output by one person. This can democratize art because now more people can create art, but it also leaves more room for manipulation. Okay, and I think that's what we also can see with AI. For example, part of my tattoos that are healing right now, I designed with Midjourney. At least I designed the inspiration and I gave it to my tattoo artist, and he then customized it, obviously, but changed it, drew his own stuff. But I used it as like an inspiration, okay? I could not have done it without AI, clearly, because I cannot draw paint to save my life. So it democratizes artwork, but of course, manipulating it, if it's a mechanical process, is way easier than manipulating like the artist, right? Also, I think AI in this case challenges like the concept of like, what's authentic? What's real? Is what the artist creates real? But then why should AI not be real? Because someone actually put the thought in it, the prompt, right? Typed it. So then isn't what I type not also creative and real? So I hope you see that evolving role of like the artist when it comes to AI, and maybe an AI-assisted creative landscape, I guess we can call it. Would you value AI-created art less than manually created art? But then again, someone had to give the prompt to the AI to actually create the art. Unless the AI works by itself, based on what it learned as a language model, to then write prompts itself. What are your thoughts? At FunkyPod, let me know. I'm really, because that's actually what I research right now on, what we research on at university. So please do let me know what you think. I might send out a survey soon, because that's very, very interesting. And one last thing in just this regard, because I talked about business communication on last Friday, predictive analysis. That's something that all the businesses want, right? So does AI give us like that crystal ball, or is it like more... Exactly. Or is it more educated guessing? And one thing here that we can relate on, and I'm going to talk a bit faster because we know it, is agenda setting. Right? Agenda setting, as you know, agenda setting theory states that the media may not tell us what to think, but what to think about. So they're really very successful in telling us, hey, think about this topic, okay? Focus on that. So this kind of posits the media focus on certain issues and subjects leads to public perception, like how the public perceives several issues as more important than others. Like you look at the European Championships, look at the Olympic Games coming soon, right? Don't look at this. Don't look at like the presidential debate, and so like two old people arguing way past their bedtime. Look over here, something shiny. Okay, that's the agenda setting theory. So in regards to like this crystal balling, right, to like, are we really looking at the pure data, for example, that we're getting? Or are we relying way too much on the outlets that telling us what to look at? So we're not looking at the data. We're looking at, hey, I looked at the data. Look what I'm telling you to look at now. So don't worry, the election, whatever, look at this, right? So who are we really trusting is the question here, I think. So that's something that we should always keep in mind, because as we elaborated many times here on the podcast, everybody that puts out content has an agenda. Be it a news channel, be it a podcast, be it a website, be it your grandma. Everybody who puts out content has an agenda. That agenda doesn't need to be a bad agenda. That agenda, probably like even news outlets, that they don't think it's a bad agenda, they just have a money-making agenda, right? So just be aware that everywhere, everybody, you see content, there's agenda behind it. So be aware of that, okay? That's important, because, as I said, AI-driven predictions for the election, for example, and content recommendations can be influenced. They can influence the public discourse. Now, after the debate in the US, right, now then predictions are like, oh, who won the debate? And then if you're just using AI to sway the content creation, for example, you can influence public discourse based on your agenda. So, again, be aware everybody has an agenda. Be aware of that. Okay. Also, last point on that, right, before I move on, it's kind of like also AI becoming more like a gatekeeper now, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing. So because AI learns from the content that is online, right? So then the more AI content is online, the more AI relates on that content. So it learns from itself, from its own produced content. But then if the content isn't real, if it's like based on agenda setting, so it learns from biased content. You see where we're going, right? Everybody has an agenda. Don't let them fool you, okay? That's very important. Okay. Third point out of, I think I wrote 8 points. So the third point I want to make is availability. Is AI really for everyone, or is it just for the tech bros? And again, we talk about, and today I use this word a lot, democratization of AI tools versus the digital divide, right? So AI tools should, of course, democratize content creation, whatever, but then the digital divide is there. Not everybody can access those tools, obviously, right? And this then leads to a theory that we call the knowledge gap hypothesis. So this hypothesis states that as like, I'm going to call it infusion of mass media or media information into like the social system increases, the higher like socioeconomic status segments tend to acquire this information faster than lower socioeconomic status segments. Understandable, right? So higher socioeconomic status segments, so people in the upper class or in the middle class that have access to media, internet, and so on, will acquire this new information faster than people in the lower socioeconomic classes. I try to not say class, but I think it's easier in this case, because they don't have the constant access to it, okay? That leads to that gap in knowledge between those two levels. It increases, right? Which is, of course, not what we want. So AI, while it has the power to give the information to everybody, might actually widen the information and maybe even skill like disparities, because not everybody can access it at the same level. So the question would be, in this case, what strategies could we use to mitigate this new form of the digital divide, right? It's not just internet access, it's just also access to like tools such as ChatGPT, for example. Should there be free services? But the paid services are much better, obviously. So then the ones that use paid services will have an advantage. So in the end, it's like you get what you don't pay for. So the digital divide leading to a knowledge gap, to a bigger knowledge gap, big point of discussion from my point of view that isn't had enough, because this will lead to a huge drift in society. I'm still pro AI to some extent, just to make it clear. Also, there's a theory in media and communication studies that we call political economy of communication. Okay, so this approach kind of examines how media and communication systems are influenced by and influence also the social, political, and economic conditions in which they actually operate. So they influenced by those conditions and they influence those conditions again. Okay, it kind of focuses on how like ownership, for example, of the media, support mechanisms like advertising, for example, and also government policies influence media behavior and content. Okay, so question here would be how like power structures in AI access and control are happening, right? Who gets access to AI tools, who doesn't, for example, which AI tools will be free to use, which won't, and this also leads to, for example, AI ownership being a big issue, right? So if, for example, someone doesn't like Elon Musk, then maybe Gronk XAI will be not available, right, in a country or in certain states or whatever it might be. Not saying that now with the Elon Musk one is a terrible, it's terrible that it's not available, but just to make the point, right? Someone, like if somewhere, TikTok is banned in India, for example, right? So let's say TikTok would have an AI, an LLM behind it or something, right? Then, for example, people in India couldn't use it. So this could then also lead to discrepancies, of course. So the question again is how power structures in AI and AI access, AI control, how they influence the way we communicate, the way we access information, data, and hence then how it influences society. This leads me to my fourth point, which is then the implementation possibilities. When we talk about implementation possibilities, right? Pardon me. So will we have an AI in every pocket? Or is it just like in those wet Silicon Valley dreams that that's the case? If you look into media content creation, right, then the algorithms kind of become the authors, right? And if you look at like some theories there, for example, there's a theory that a director's film reflects the director's personal creative vision, right? So it suggests that the best films are a result of the director, that individual's creative control, and therefore bear that unmistakable imprint of the director. So if you see like a certain director movie, you're like, okay, that's this director. I can see from the way the camera moves, the cuts, and so on, right? So now the question is, if the AI becomes that author, that director, whatever, right, that person, that program behind the creative output, the question would be, what are the implications here? If there's not an individual doing it, if it's just a program doing it, can you tell the AI, hey, I want my movies to all look like Jerry Bruckheimer movies, for example, like the Bad Boys opening, for example. Was it Channel 1? I think so. What about copyright? If we have AI authors, AI directors, what about artistic recognition? Who gets the Oscar for best director? ChatGPT? I feel like in class, you tell me. There's questions on my mind. You tell me. I think it's very, very, very difficult to come to a conclusion there. I mean, that's a reason why people want to regulate it, right? But then, should you regulate it? Isn't it then censoring? So many questions. To give an easier example, though, right? Customer service. Like chatbots are there, right? So chatbots understand you maybe even better than your partner, than a human customer service agent. And there's a theory for that. It's called social presence theory. And this social presence theory actually says that the effectiveness of communication is influenced by the degree of social presence afforded by the medium. So social presence, however, is defined as the degree to which a person is perceived as a real person in whatever mediated communication you're having, okay? This means that AI needs to have an ability to create the sense of social presence, like really actively listening to you. this leads to also what I find very interesting. I think AI models are getting there, right? They're like, yeah, hey, what's your, hey, then they call, hey, Sasha, they use your name and so on, right? So they're getting there with like giving you the attention that you want, need, deserve. So they can create more of like a feeling of a social presence. But then it leads to those psychological impacts of human AI interaction. Right? How do we the movie Her, for example? Will this happen? Will we get stronger feelings? Not with the chatbot from your customer service, but generally speaking, communicating with AI, right? In customer service, hopefully it leads to us being like, yeah, okay, I'm going to keep talking to you. I'm not annoyed that you're a bot right now, so just give me what I need. Great. And then the next step, will we have feelings for the chatbot? Is the question. Will you have feelings for the chatbot? If you're honest, shout out. I want to know. The next step also related to this is then, though, I think the easiest to understand when it comes to news, right? News curation. So will we be stuck in echo chambers, like an echo chamber on steroids? We have echo chambers in social media already, right? Your algorithm shows you what you're interested in or what you interact with, not necessarily what you like, but what you interact with the most. So then, like, will we be caught in like this steroided PED up echo chamber? Like, and here, of course, we have the filter bubble theory that you might have heard when it comes to social media. This theory just explains that algorithmic filtering of all the content online leads to intellectual isolation. Okay, because you only see stuff that you interact with, either that you agree with or that outrages you, and you're interacting with it too, right? So users became separated from information that disagrees with their viewpoints. Now that kind of like effectively isolates you, those people who fall for it, in like their own cultural and also ideological bubbles, which of course is a problem. The thing is, right, also McLuhan coined the term the global village. And you have access to the whole world thanks to the internet in our case, but it feels like a village because you can know so many things about everybody. So we're actually all connected. But the more we're connected, the more we're separated. Isn't that crazy? Because the more bubbles we are in. And it drives me nuts. Ever since I'm like in this métier of media studies, this specific thing that's happening drives me nuts. We should all be open-minded. We should all be talking to each other, but we're in our small little filter bubbles. Extremely annoying. And AI curated content, of course, will enhance that. Will make that like even more tailored to your needs, because it's much easier now to analyze data. What do you like? What do you dislike? Right? And I'm giving you more of that. So we gotta have to figure out how to maintain a diverse information exposure. But the thing is, you need to be actively doing that. You need to actively search for other sources that don't agree with you. And it's hard to do, especially after like a long day at work, you're coming home. You don't want to actively search for someone to disagree with. You're like, okay, check your social media feed. Oh, look at them. Yeah, I knew Biden is Trump is whatever, right? It's hard to get out of that. It's so hard, but we have to. So don't give up. It's all a mindset thing. So get into the right mindset and don't be stuck. Okay, it's important. Okay, a few more things before I wrap it up. Speed of implementation. Also, one of the things I talk about in class a lot. The AI revolution is coming soon. Is it? Like, I think, kind of like. Computers have been around since since the war, but like really then like in business settings, 1956-ish or so, I think. So is it really coming? Hype cycle before, I told you it's going to change everything. Maybe not, we're not using it, like the Gartner hype cycle. And one of my favorite series this year so far, I'm going to throw it in there too, diffusion of innovation. We talked about it the last 2 or 3 podcasts already, so that's why I keep it short, so I talk fast, right? So this theory, again, seeks to explain like how, why, and what rate new ideas and technologies spread. Okay, it argues that diffusion is kind of like the process by which like an innovation is communicated over time among those participants that are in a social system. Okay, this is also a cultural background, by the way. For example, like speed of implementation of new technologies happens faster in cultures such as maybe. I'm taking examples from over here, right? Southeast Asia or Asia. So, for example, in Japan, South Korea, Singapore even, technologies are adapted faster usually than, for example, here in Thailand. could go down on like a cultural breakdown, but just to give you an example, okay? But back to the diffusion of innovation. So it really depends on like the communication and how new technologies are being communicated within a society, okay? So then the adoption pattern of AI across different sectors is interesting to look at, right? So for example, tech people, they're more into like tech and innovation, of course, they use it faster than people that are not. So now, what do you have more of? Do you have lots of tech people in a society? Don't you, for example? Is a society like tech averse, for example, or are they pro-technology? So there are several factors like this influencing AI adoption rates, right? Again, the culture playing a big part in it. Like, for example, Thai culture usually being a little bit slower in adapting it than other cultures, for example. Okay. Also, there's a big gap between research breakthroughs and practical applications, obviously. Just because you have a research breakthrough doesn't mean it's practically applicable. So and the theory that aligns with this is what we call the two-step flow model. It's an older model already, but it fits here as well because it suggests that information from the media moves in two distinct stages. Okay, the first are like opinion leaders who pay close attention to what's happening in the media and the messages they receive, the information. And the second, those leaders pass on the message. So if there's a research breakthrough, right, you're not hearing about it. Why? Because we cannot take in all the information in the world, right? We rely on key opinion leaders, news anchors, influencers, whatever that might be, to give us the right information, right? So we are not getting the information from up there. We're getting the information from the key opinion leader that looks up there and then makes like sense of it, for example, okay? So that's the two-step flow model. So now AI innovations are communicated beyond the tech community by key opinion leaders, by influencers, by news anchors, and so on. So we're not getting the latest information on AI, right? We're getting like what those opinion leaders, what they're telling us. Okay, so that's a very important part here, I believe. So who do we follow? Who do we trust? Do we really pay close attention, or is it just like, hey, here's a new AI thing, try it? If MKHBD says, hey, here's Marquise Brownlee says like, hey, here's a new AI tool, try it. We're like, yeah, sure. Yeah, or do we really pay close attention? Also, the limitations of AI, like the kryptonite of AI, like common sense and ethics. I hope you have some. Yeah, bias in, bias out. Algorithms do inherit human flaws, obviously, because they're trained on what we have to offer. So the cultivation theory, had it many times, that's why I'm so fast, suggests that long-term exposure to media content cultivates viewers' perspective of reality, right? So it suggests that heavy TV, for example, usage leads to mean world syndrome because you always see the bad news. The same with the internet, of course, right? So now how does AI-generated content shape societal perceptions? Similar to what we discussed before. So if AI shows you a certain kind of content, then your perception will be shaped by that. Okay, and of course, it's easier to create AI content than real content, for lack of a better term. Okay? So then the question is, can we identify AI-generated content? And can we identify content that is biased? Agenda setting. Everybody has an agenda. Always ask a question. Okay, so you should always be asking that. There's one more thing related to that that I also discussed in class, so my students know it already, the black box fallacy, the black box problem. I stick with fallacy. It's easy to say, black box fallacy. Yeah, when the creators don't even know what's going on. And the theory that relates to that is the media dependence theory as well. Okay, so we talked about it before. The theory talks about the more a person depends on the media to satisfy the needs, the more important the media's role will be in that person's life, and therefore the more influence the media will have on that person, right? So I use media a lot to create content, for example, but it means that I rely on media a lot. That means the media will influence my life a lot, okay? Crazy, yeah. Also then, this means in return society using a lot of media will rely a lot on the media, and if the AI is there to actually create that media, we will relate a lot on AI. So AI will influence our society because we relate so much on creating content, creating media, and so on. Another one is symbolic interactionism. We also talked about this, and I talk so fast right now because in 5 minutes, lots of noise will be happening out there behind me where I'm recording because of roadwork. So I want to finish the podcast within 5 minutes. So Symbolic interactionism says that the importance of meaning and interpretation in human interaction matters, right? So it posits that people act toward things based on the meaning those things have for them. So different things have different meanings to you. My tattoos mean more to me than they mean to you, right? So these meanings are derived from social interaction and modified through interpretation. So people hate on tattoos, like, I don't want to have a tattoo, for example. So AI has challenges in interpreting like complex human communication. Right? So while we have lots of context, if you're talking to each other, communicating, AI does not. How do we teach AI context? How do we teach AI body language? How do we teach AI intonation? How do we teach AI sarcasm? And so on. It's very, very difficult. So context matters in human interaction, but how do we get the context in the human-AI interaction is the question. That's why you should never blindly trust AI. You can tell AI, hey, AI, be funny, be sarcastic, but it's not going to work that well because AI doesn't have context-based communication the way that we have. Yes, you can add context to communication and machines do that by labeling things, for example, but still the context that humans have is completely different because we are more aware of like what's around us. Okay, so context-driven AI human interaction still a big thing and still like a very big thing that prevents AI from being as good as it should be in order to replace us, for example. Okay, quickly, the dangers is it Skynet or is it just dump internet? Of course, misinformation is a big thing. Misinformation on steroids, if you will. Again, for example, deep fakes, synthetic media. Social learning theory says that we learn by observation. So the more we observe, the more we learn, the more that influences our perception of what is true, what is not true, and so on. The more we change our behavior. So the more AI content we're consuming out there, the more this will influence the way we behave, the way we understand the world. Again, agenda setting will influence us. Okay. A new theory there is called the panopticon theory. This explains that it's like more of a metaphor for modern disciplinary societies and their like pervasive inclination to observe and normalize. Okay, so the theory means that when people believe they're being watched, they modify their behavior accordingly. So are we being monitored by AI? If we think AI always records everything that we're doing, how do we change our behavior? Social credit score, for example, China. That's one thing to think about. So the balance between personalization and privacy. What's more important? We want everything personalized, but then they need all our data. Will we change our behavior because they get all our data? Or will privacy be more important to us and we're banning them from having our data, but then it's less convenient? You see that, right? And of course, also job replacement. Will AI replace us, right? Why are you already working? You still have 3 minutes for your lunch break, damn it. Last theory, technological determinism or social shaping technology. Technological determinism says technology influences the way we think, behave, the way we see the world. Social shaping technology says no, society shapes technology. So the technological determinism suggests that technology will develop no matter what we do, what we think. If we can develop technology, we will develop it and then it will influence us. Okay, that's technological determinism. Social shaping of technology says no, we develop technology based on the needs of society. Now, what is true? Chicken, egg, I mean, that's an obvious answer, but technological determinism or social shaping technology. So will AI inevitably drive social change or will social factors shape AI development? Yeah, will AI drive social change? Will society influence AI development? All right, now it's getting really loud, so I'm finishing my podcast now. Thanks for listening. Follow FundedPod. Leave some reviews. Be awesome. Tell me what you think about AI. Don't get replaced by robots. Until then, stay safe. Take care. Sawadee Krap.